I'm Dr. Jen with White Wave Bodywork, and I'd like to talk to you today about stretching the quads and hip flexors. One of the ways I like to do that is familiar to a lot of people as a runner stretch. So I'm going to take you through that today with a little bit of components that you may not have tried before. And we'll do it in different positions so that you can see from different angles. First, we'll turn to the side, and if your knees hurt to kneel on them, what I want you to try to do is fold up a blanket or use a pillow underneath them. So I'm going to step forward with one of my legs, and I'm going to try to get it so that this kneeling knee is straight underneath my hip, and this front foot is underneath my front knee. The next thing I'm going to try to do is make sure both hips are pointed forward. A lot of times when one leg is back and one leg is forward, our body likes to twist and turn. So I'm going to try to square up my hips, meaning both of these front hip bones, if they had eyeballs, would be staring front forward. Okay? From here, a lot of times people just do this to try and stretch the hip flexor. What I want you to try to do today is, before doing that, shift your hips back to try to create a hip hinge here. And then from that space where this back hip has a hinge, tuck the pelvis under to try to flatten out the low back. Then rock forward and see how limited that amount of motion is and how much more of a stretch that you might have when you rock forward. Now, if I tell you to tuck and then you rock forward and you let it go, you're not going to feel that. So what I want you to try to do is hinge back, get a little space, tuck your pelvis into that space, keep the tuck, make sure this back is still tucked and flat, and then keep your body upright, shoulders stacked over the hips, and come forward. Now for me, that's where I feel it. That's my end point in this position once I've tucked my pelvis. If I let go of that tuck, I can go all day forward, no problem. And probably you can too if you have the ability to do this stretch or you knew that you could do it in the first place. Let me show you from the front, and I'll use a different knee. You're trying to get both of these hip bones at the same level and pointed forward. So a lot of times you'll see people trying to get into funky positions. If you have to twist and turn your hips to get into this position, this might not be the right level of a stretch for you. So let's do it from this position. I've stacked this bottom knee underneath my hip, this front knee on top of my ankle in the front, so it's like 90-degree angle, city over here. And then we're tucking the pelvis. That's what that tuck looks like. It's like taking the hinge out of my hip here as I'm sitting back, tucking the pelvis, keeping the body upright, and then trying to shift forward. That's where I stop, guys, right there. If I maintain that tuck of the pelvis and I get a nice good stretch way up high in the hip flexor area. So there's not a ton of stretch on my quad in this position, but there is a really good stretch for the hip flexors, and one of those is your quad. So your rectus femoris, to be exact. So what I want you to try to do is, when you're trying to stretch the hip flexors in general, or the front of the thigh in general, don't just stop there at that runner stretch, but also do something that brings your heel to your backside. So one of these kinds of ideas, and we'll go over that in another video. But just to clarify, I definitely would want you to do both if you were having anything like knee pain or patellar tracking problems. Stretching the hip flexor and the quad is important. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something good. See you next time.